Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judah, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the Full10Yard NFL podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. I'm your new host, Sam Moores, and today I am joined by fellow Full 10 Yards writer Charlie Grace for the first time on this podcast. Welcome, Charlie. Nice to have you.
Yeah, good to be on. Thank you for having me.
That's all right, mate. Today we're back for another 2023 preview podcast, this time looking at both the AFC and NFC East, which both feature a ton of top-tier talent. I did a roster ranking the other day, and 6 of these 8 teams are in the top half of the league talent-wise, except both divisions to have multiple playoff teams. Just before we get into this podcast, there are a few Full 10 Yards exciting things to plug as the season nears. Look, we're a couple weeks away now. It's madness. The preseason started already. First of all, our season preview guide is going into production now and is available to pre-order now on the website too. Both of us have contributed to over 40 pages of the guide, and I can safely say this year is going to be better than ever. You can buy it on its own for £7.50, which is half the cost from last year, with even more pages too, I must add, or as part of a £15 bundle with a ticket for our kickoff party at Felson's in Birmingham. For the first time ever, Full 10 Yards are hosting an event to kick off the 2023 NFL season. As on Sunday 10th of September, you can join our team and fellow UK fans and watch all of Week 1's games at Felson's in Birmingham. Individual tickets are £10 and come with a free drink, which is a terrific deal, by the way. So come along and meet some fellow UK-based NFL fans and challenge us to a game of pool or even shuffleboard. Visit www.full10yards.co.uk to buy your ticket and or guide. And it's a very exciting time for us here at Full 10 Yards. And Charlie, the two of us have spent a while on the guide this summer, but it's going to be really good to read.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Put a lot of hours into it, but I'm quite happy with what I put out. I've added a quick kind of scan of the other stuff that's been sent through, and it's all really good. So
yeah, and like I said earlier, I think between us we've done about 24 articles for the guide. It's whatever 40 pages. Like the two of us have we have contributed a fair bit to this guide. It's
initially I was like a couple of team bits to get me through the summer, and then ended up there was about halfway through the process, and there was a few that weren't picked up. So I was like, I've got time on my hands, I may as well do those. So yeah, we've got a good chunk of work in this summer.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. Anyway, let's get into this podcast and start with the reigning AFC East champions, Sean McDermott's Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills, obviously last year they lost to the Bengals in the divisional round, and like Cincinnati, are back to beat not only those Bengals but also the Chiefs. There's sort of like a 3-team rivalry at the top of the AFC at the moment, and it's one of the best stories in the league, every single year, because they're always at the end of the season too. I think Chiefs Bengals this year is week 17, so it's right at the end of the season, so it could, the one seed could come down to that very game. And this team, I don't know about you, Charlie, but it just embodies the Bills Mafia fan base, because Josh Allen is about as perfect a fit in Buffalo as any QB can be, because he's so tough. Like, he's like the hardest man to stop in the league. Yeah, in the guide I did, I wrote a bit in the guide actually, and I said he's like Iron Man. He's just solid. He's built. He's like a dark trooper in Star Wars. He's just like more machine than man. And look, the Bills team run through him, and because of Josh Allen as well, this Bills team will always be in contention, right?
Yeah. If there's ever a quarterback in the league that's going to jump through a table, it's going to be Josh Allen, isn't it? But yeah, it's like you said, it's really exciting to have 3 teams at the top of, arguably 3 of the 4 best teams in the league. Definitely 3 of the top 5, I'd say, and all in that kind of AFC elite bracket, all with an elite quarterback, all with at least one like elite receiving target, and then got good head coaches as well. So it's really exciting, really tight kind of battle at the top of the AFC, and every year you kind of go into it with predictions, and most people will have either Buffalo, Cincinnati, or Kansas City in their Super Bowl prediction, and you could give a justifiable argument as to why for all three.
Exactly, and you alluded to it there. This team has obviously got realistic Super Bowl ambitions. They've got a top QB, the receivers to do it. They've got a defense. My only worry this team is the offensive line, because it's probably now the worst unit in the division. Maybe the Jets, but the New England's offensive line is always going to be good. Miami have improved on the offensive line, and it did get Josh Allen into trouble a bit last year. So I mean, they've not really adjusted this season, so in this offseason, so it did sort of confuse me a little. But the problem is you've got so many stars in this team, you have to pay him, and obviously Josh Allen is more durable than many other quarterbacks in this league. We've not seen him take the injuries or get hurt that Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes have. But he's not. He is human. He may have an injury, so that he may get injured behind this line. So that is my only concern with the Bills team. But you've got two new stars in Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. Cook was drafted last year, obviously, but didn't really have a big role. This year, he is going to have a much bigger role. We mentioned a lot in a few minutes Dalvin Cook in this podcast, because there's a few teams that are after him. But he said he doesn't want to sign there because he wants his brother to have a big role in Buffalo. So that's kind of ruled out there. And if this team can find a run game, then they will be scary, because that's the one thing that sort of eluded them, offensively, because they've just not been able to run the ball when they've needed to, and they've had to rely on Allen's arm a lot. And we've had a lot of shootouts for the Bills recently. The defense is good, but if they can establish a run game, that would be excellent, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've got Josh Allen is all their run game at the moment, basically.
Yeah.
If they run a play, it's generally him who's going to be the primary runner instead, just because, I mean, Devin Singletary was there for a couple of years, but never really did anything. James Cook now. But they'd looked I remember watching them a few times last year, and it was like they'd run a stretch play, and he just didn't seem to have that burst of speed to get to the outside and break a hole. So whether they're going to scheme up something different for him this year, but generally, if they were to run through the middle of the gut, it was Josh Allen, and you just can't ask him to do that all the time, and him be a sustainable kind of threat and asset to your team.
Yeah, it is an interesting story to watch. I mentioned Dalton Kincaid as well. They drafted him in the first round. They traded up for him. They fell in love with his receiving abilities. Obviously, drafting a tight end, even when they had one of the best, he's not elite, but he's certainly a good tight end in Dawson Knox. They signed a slot receiver too, Trent Sherfield, who me and you have had many conversations about. He's not only good as a receiver, but also as a tremendous run blocker. So that should help the run game too. And the defense, they got super banged up last year. Obviously, lost safeties, lost Von Miller as well. They're all back, although Von Miller is on PUP at the moment. And they only really lost Tremaine Edmonds, who in free agency too. And obviously, linebacker is a position you can really afford to use, because it's not the most valuable nowadays, is it really? Yeah. So I'm interested to see the difference without Leslie Frazier this year, because he has stepped away from coaching. So is that a break? So obviously, it'll be all Sean McDermott this year, the defense. So I'm interested to see how different that is. But obviously, I mean, the reason why McDermott got the job was because of his defense in Carolina. So it's not like he's not a decent defensive play caller or anything. And I think personally, they're still probably the team to beat in the AFC East, but it will be a much closer race this time, right?
Well, I think they have to be the team to beat, just because their kind of pedigree. They haven't. You wouldn't say there's been any major shake-up in their team that's caused them to kind of go from first to worst or anything like that. Other teams have improved, but they haven't. They haven't weakened themselves, I wouldn't say. And I mean, Tremaine Edmonds, they drafted Dorian Williams in the draft, who's. I think I saw a couple of people compare the two in the pre-draft process, so it's kind of almost a like for like. Obviously, he's a rookie, so he's not going to hit the ground running straight away, but you've got a replacement in the building. I think AJ Klein they extended as well, who was there last year, their middle linebacker.
You got Matt Milano as well, so
not going to get headlines.
Linebacker. Yeah,
they're not short of the position, and Sean McDermott's a good defensive mind, great defensive mind anyway. So they'll find ways around it.
Yeah, so if the Dolphins or Jets are going to contend in the AFC East, they'll have to beat Buffalo. And one team who did beat Buffalo last year was the Miami Dolphins. Played 3 times. They won the first contest. I think it was week 2 or 3. I think it might have been week 3. After a strong first year, Mike McDaniel, well, obviously they started out 3-0 before Tua's concussion. Miami now look even better on paper than they did a year ago. And a year ago, they were one of the best offenses in the league when Tua was healthy. And they're ready to cause problems. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, start with them. This duo are so difficult to stop with their elite speed that they helped to take a massive jump to lead the league in pass rating last year, being the MVP conversation for most of it. Like a lot of people say maybe Devontae Adams or Justin Jefferson are the best receiver in the league, but what makes Tyreek Hill tick is because he is literally uncoverable. He can go past you like that, and Jefferson can separate. That's he's a great route runner, and so is Devontae Adams. But they can't stretch the field like Tyreek Hill can. And we saw many times last year. I mean, look, if Tua stayed healthy, Tyreek probably would have gone near 2,000 yards last year. I think he had 1,700. And Tua missed like 5 games. So he had. He broke the single season reception record and receiving yards record as well that Mark Clayton had, who was an excellent receiver for the Dolphins, about Dan Marino. And this team. I mean, we'll go back to Waddle and Hill, but this team they can do really well, especially offensively, but also with Vic Fangio on defense. It's just whether Tua can stay on the field, really, isn't it? And that's the thing, obviously. Last year he did.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he avoided a body injury. He didn't get hurt. It's just the concussions that was a problem. Like, it's like he didn't get banged up. He didn't miss a game because of injury, but he did have a head injury. So it's kind of like on 3 separate occasions he's done everything to really stop that. With his jiu-jitsu, he obviously learned how to fall. Actually, this would be great. I heard a story the other day that he was basically getting pressure in training camp. Obviously, you can't hit a QB in training camp. They wear the red jersey, but he was under pressure. He did a backflip to get out of the to sort of help himself forward. I mean, that's impressive, isn't it? Really, because you wouldn't expect Tua to do that, really. But there is that. But I mean, look, he's done everything he can, bulking up and everything to basically stay on that field. And if he does, this Dolphins team with Hill, with Waddle, could be unstoppable, right? On the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I think he changed his helmet as well. There's a couple of quarterbacks have changed their helmet. Don't know what the company is. It's the one that Russell Wilson and Derek Carr have had for a couple of years.
It's a lighter helmet, but apparently it's better for the head, which makes sense.
It's like VCIS or something like that. I think
yeah.
Company makes it. I saw Joe Burrow's changed to it as well. I think. Yeah, the question with Tua is his availability, isn't it? And it's can you guarantee that he'll be there for 18 games plus like a playoff run? And well, it's yet to be seen, isn't it? With 3 concussions is quite scary in a year, especially for a quarterback. But if he can stay healthy, because Waddle and Hill are amazing, aren't they? As a dynamic duo, and then you got who's the tight end you end up drafting?
We drafted Elijah Higgins, but I don't know if he's going to make an impact. Really, the tight end in training camp, the person who's been impressing a lot is fullback Alec Ingold. It sounds like he might have more of a tight end role, or be basically have a fullback set for a lot of the time and have Durham Smythe as one tight end. I think that's what Miami is sort of leading towards. Which, I mean, Ingold, we saw his time in the Raiders. He's not afraid to catch passes. He did it a lot with John Gruden. So they haven't really addressed the tight end issue, but Durham Smythe is a great blocking tight end. So that's what McDaniel likes. Obviously, moving on from Gesicki, he couldn't block for Toffees, and we'll talk about him later, the Patriots. But I mean, it's I mean, look, he's got Braxton Berrios in there as a third receiver as well, who's a great slot receiver, coming over from the Jets. You've got Eric Ezukanma, who was drafted in the 4th round, or maybe it might be in the 3rd round last year. He's a guy of more size, so again, he could maybe act as like a red zone target. But he's had a great camp, and you've also got Robbie Anderson or Chosen, or I think he's called Robbie Chosen now. But he's now, isn't he? Yeah, but he's had a few plays taking the top off the defense in training camp too. So got plenty of options to throw to, And the offensive line also sounds like it might be better because Austin Jackson hasn't been a turnstile in training camp, which is just a shocker. They've got Isaiah Wynn coming over from the Patriots too, who will eventually replace Liam Eichenberg at left guard, who'll sort of act as like a swing option at left tackle too when Teron Armstead eventually misses a game, because it will happen because he normally plays about 13 a season. And yeah, the offense looks great. And I mean, defensively, it should improve massively as well. They took a step back last year, obviously losing Brian Flores because he got fired, and Josh Boyer sort of didn't really adapt when there were a ton of injuries. They've always been talented, and I mean, they're expected to be much better with Vic Fangio. You're wearing a Broncos jersey, obviously former Broncos head coach. They filled the Byron Jones hole, who didn't play for the whole last season, with not only Jalen Ramsey, who we'll talk about in a minute, who they got for peanuts and paid him a multi-year contract, but then also drafted Callum Smith too, and have added Eli Apple since Jalen Ramsey got injured. He's torn his meniscus, so he'll be he's not done for the season. He'll be available towards the end of the year, which is when Miami may really need him. But drafting Callum Smith in the second round, it sounded like they already had assurance at the cornerback position anyway. So if there was any star you could lose in this Dolphins team, it's probably Ramsey, because there's depth there at corner. You've got Nick Needham, you've got Kader Kohu as well, who had a great rookie year last year. So losing Ramsey's not as bad as it could have been, and you get him back at the end of the year when you're playing, Buffalo again, and that could be the difference really in the race of division. I do want to put one more thing before we go on to the Jets. Dalvin Cook. There's a lot of noise about him. His two most likely destinations are the Dolphins and the Jets. Obviously, he's a hometown kid from Florida, and he said his preferred destination is Miami. The Dolphins weren't great at running the ball last year, but were better than previously, obviously, because it's still a Shanahan kind of scheme, but not what was expected. And they went away from it a lot as well. McDaniel sort of, if it was 3rd and 1, a lot of the time he would get a passing set out there. So Dalvin Cook, obviously, that it's no secret they're going after him. So the Jets put him in for a visit. It's just, I mean, if you add him to this offense as well, then again, that could be the thing that takes him over the top if Tua stays healthy.
Yeah, I'd say, given Mike McDaniel's obviously going to be a run-first scheme, it's going to draw up the run play like the Shanahan tree that he's come from. You probably are lacking an elite running back. That's probably the hole you'd look at.
You've got Mostert, you've got Savon Ahmed, you just drafted Devon Achane. He's a track sprinter in college, but you don't have it between.
There's not an elite running back who's you're going to bulldoze kind of 4 yards, move the chains on first down. Anyone down in like the red zone who, if you're on the 2-3 yard line, you could just run a power play and bundle his way over the line, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like a lot of the time, Tua had to throw the ball in the red zone last year.
Yeah,
So
those running backs don't come. It's not like you can just go out and pick one up on the free agent market, obviously. But when there is one available, like Dalvin Cook, you got to try and do all you can to get him, because with the scheme fit, the other elite players on offense, he can revolutionize your Super Bowl chances.
Yeah, so with Miami, as we've been saying, if Tua stays on the field, which there's more of a chance he will do this year, but history tells us that he won't play 17 games. But if he can play 14-15, the Dolphins may be Buffalo's biggest competition. They couldn't beat him at all with Brian Flores. They beat him the first time, Mike McDaniel, and the other two times it was with one score too. So they're probably Buffalo's biggest competition. But there's also the added competition in the New York Jets, who are suddenly in the championship window after adding Aaron Rodgers to a very talented team, that's full of future stars. They have the reigning offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson, and the reigning defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner. And I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers has come to this team because he's out to prove he's not finished. He's a 4-time MVP, but he took a big decline last year, ending at Lambeau Field at Green Bay. Not in the best terms. Obviously, that loss to Detroit, he didn't really, didn't have the chance to really say goodbye. He just went, "Oh, okay, I'm gone now." I mean, Jordan Love was always going to play at some point, but after a poor year, Rodgers is. I mean, look, he comes into the AFC, makes the AFC even more competitive, and I mean, to be honest with you, if he can get running, this Jets team could beat the playoffs for the first time since about 2010.
Yeah, I did the Jets, one of the teams I did my preview for. And yeah, I mean, 13 years now. It will be 13 years by the time that playoffs come out. They've missed it. I think they've had even more than 13 quarterbacks start for them since then.
Yeah,
it's been a revolving door at the position. I think them and Denver are the two with the most starting quarterbacks in the last kind of decade. But we saw last year that the rest of the team is ready to compete. The defense, especially, is there. It's ready to compete, and everyone knew they were the quarterback away, because if they had an Aaron Rodgers last year, they would have made the playoffs, undisputed. I think that's a fact. So now they have Rodgers, and he's got Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard have come over. I don't think they're massive game changers on the team, but it helps transition. Nathaniel Hackett's there, who he had a good relationship with in Green Bay. The less I say, the better. But as an offensive mind, I don't think you can dispute that he's obviously, he's going to help Rodgers in the transition, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Nathaniel Hackett. I'll get onto him quickly as well. Obviously, he comes over from Denver, where he was head coach last year, to be at OC, linking up with Rodgers, who was within Green Bay. Rodgers was actually quick to defend Hackett after the Sean Payton comments last week. Both will now have a chip on their shoulder, and the Week 5 game should be interesting, right?
I was going to say, is it? Week 4, Week 5. Yeah, in Mile High as well. It's going to be hostile.
Revenge game.
If nothing else. Yeah.
But,
or for Russell Wilson, one or the other.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I mean, Sean Payton, that surprised me actually, but he's done that a lot recently. Obviously, since he's been at Fox, he's sort of become more vocal. So with some of the things he says. I mean, I think he went on Colin Cowherd start of last season and said that within 2 or 3 weeks, Miami would bench Tua for Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, I know he worked with Bridgewater before, but you would have thought, if anyone who would have, seen what Tua is good at, it would be Sean Payton, bearing in mind that that's literally what Drew Brees was good at. So it's one of those things where I feel like, is he really saying that for a reaction or not? Like, obviously, like the reaction for what he's just said with nothing, obviously the worst coaching job of in the NFL last season. I mean, it probably was true, but as a coach, you don't really say that about other coaches, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's different when you're inside the building, isn't it? And you see the kind of the stuff, you hear about the stuff that we didn't see behind the scenes. We only see on surface level how bad it was. When the crowd's counting down the play clock for you, so that you don't.
I forgot about that.
Get the delay game, or you have to hire someone to watch the clock for you. It gets to a point where you have to question it. But as an offensive coordinator, I think he's going to be perfectly fine for the Jets. He's done offensive coordinator roles before, I think, or at least he's been offensive control roles before. And yeah, he drew up some nice scheme plays for the Broncos last year, and Russell Wilson obviously also didn't bathe himself in glory in that system. So Rodgers is more used to it. I think it's more of a Rodgers system, and I think that'll translate well for the Jets.
Oh yeah, I mean, defensively, they're one of the best in the league. They were last year, certainly the best in the division last year. And it really hit me how good the defense is as well last week, when they had loads of the starters of previous years. Obviously, me being a Dolphins fan, I watched a lot of the Jets over the years. A lot of the starters playing in the Hall of Fame game. You're just like, hang on a minute. These guys obviously aren't starters anymore, but they played considerable snaps for the Jets over the last few years. This team is now so stacked that they are depth pieces, and they can play in the preseason. They're fighting for a job, fighting for a roster spot. When obviously before they'd be, ticked off in the top 15 players in the team. So it just shows how stout the defense is. And again, it's the same with the Bills. The one worry for me is the offensive line, because one injury and they're done. Again, it's been like that recently with the Jets. I mean, Mekhi Becton, by the sounds of it, he's not having a great camp. He's lost a lot of weight, but it's not really translated, unfortunately for him. And Dwayne Brown, the left tackle, He's on the POP at the moment, and he hasn't got the best injury history either. So it's just, if someone goes down, what happens there? You've got Elijah Vera-Tucker, but the tackles for Rodgers are a bit of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, Vera-Tucker's a guard as well, so
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
I think they can kick him out to tackle if needs be, but I don't think that's his best positions in at guard. You still need 2 tackles, and but I mean, even if Becton had a decent camp, he hasn't built any trust that he's going to be able to stay on the field for 17
he'll get
games.
hurt. Yeah.
And yeah, so obviously the offensive line's a concern. But if Rodgers is he's known for his quick release, isn't he? So if he needs to get the ball out quick, he's got good receiving core with Garrett Wilson, who was 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie season with 3 different starting quarterbacks. So if he can connect with Rodgers quickly, traditionally Rodgers isn't great with a young receiver, but if they can connect quickly, there's been clips coming out of training camp that they've got a decent connection already. So that could be a really, really exciting thing to watch. And they've also they didn't really have a run game second half of last year because Breece Hall went down with an injury, and then who's the running back? They had Michael Carter who did okay, and then the
White, isn't it? Yeah, is it Quandre White or something like that? Is that him?
I can't remember, but
yeah.
So, but Breece Hall was looking like he's going to go on for a really good year. Projected, I think, 1,000-yard rusher in his first 5 weeks before he went down with his ACL injury. So, and then potentially add Dalvin Cook to that as well, and you've got like a two-headed run game. You've got Rodgers, you've got Wilson, you've got Cobb, you've got Lazard,
Corey Davis.
Did they add someone else as well in the off season?
Can't
remember, but
they got plenty.
You got CJ Uzomah there as well.
Yeah, Conklin as well. I think you got a fair few.
As long as you can give Rodgers enough time to get the ball out, or Hackett can scheme up plays, then the defense is going to keep you in games. It's just whether you can win them.
Exactly, and I mean, look, if the line is acceptable and Rodgers plays well, then the Jets got a great shot at the division. There's no beating around the bush there. So it's a 3-horse race for the AFC East, and it will come down to who wins the most division games, probably, I think. And history tells you it's probably going to be the Bills and the Dolphins who will win the most games in division because the Jets have struggled. But obviously now they've got Aaron Rodgers, it may be a different story. We'll get on to the final team now. Go on, Karen.
Well, the other thing with the East is obviously we're talking about Buffalo being the team to beat. You have to go through Buffalo. You have
to play in Buffalo
at least once a year. That's guaranteed.
As normal, each team as well normally plays in Buffalo in the winter, so you got that too.
What you will say though is Aaron Rodgers done it in Green Bay.
True.
And Green Bay traditionally is one of those harsh weather places, so does the kind of playing in the Buffalo conditions element almost even out because you've got Rodgers there. I don't know for sure, but it's one thing that you can talk about. And I'm not sure who the Jets have their last game. They got the Patriots week 18, which could prove to be a win and in kind of scenario. But I definitely think that this is definitely a championship window.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. They are for sure, gunning for a championship. Well, they've got 2 years already. Obviously, Rodgers has restructured his contract, basically taken a pay cut, and next year as well, it's not as bad as it was before. So it's great. They've got 2 years now to build a contender, and it's entirely possible they can. If they were in the NFC, I'd say they're one of the favourites. They could probably. Yeah, they could challenge San Francisco and Philadelphia like that. It's just the problem is they've got Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Miami, the Chargers. You've got many teams.
Jags even
The
potentially.
Jags, the Ravens, the Steelers, all these teams that are capable, of being in the playoffs. They've got loaded rosters. You're just like, some of these teams are going to have to miss out, but I don't think the Jets will miss out. I think they're going to have a good season. We'll finish with the Patriots now, who I think will miss out. What are they? I mean, you'd expect them to be in the hunt sort of week 15, week 16, because it's what Belichick does and win games. But they're clearly the worst team in this division. They could finish the last in the division for the first time since 2000. And that was when the Colts were in the division. It's when it was the AFC Central. Yeah, and the Colts were in the division. It was a 5-team division. Belichick is on the hot seat by the seams of things. There are rumours that Robert Kraft is getting quite frustrated. Obviously, last year's offensive coordinator situation with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia was a joke. And Belichick's got a losing record without Tom Brady too. And it's an interesting situation with Belichick. You're just like, what's going to, because Kraft said that something has to, he said it has to be improved, but he's not going to fire Belichick, is he? Like, it's just like,
I don't think you can. I just think as a kind of for what he's done there,
I mean, he might walk away, but there could be that.
I think he's earned the right to not be fired. Mutual termination kind of thing is a different story, but yeah, they're in that kind of danger zone that that you talk about of like 6, 7, 8 wins, where you're not bad enough to improve your team in the draft, but you're not good enough to make the playoffs. So it's like, what really are you? And that's the problem sometimes when you have one of these head coaches that has been good, similar to kind of Mike Tomlin at the Steelers, kind of.
Although he's not a losing
Mike
season.
Vrabel.
No. That's the thing, is like Belichick has not been able to win games with a lesser group yet. When Tomlin, oh my god, okay, when Tomlin, Mike Vrabel have won. I mean, Vrabel's done runners in Tennessee, but yeah, it's like, but it's a big couple. It's a big year for Belichick, because what can he do with this group when they're clearly the least talented team in this division for the first time for a long time? The offense this year is expected to flow through Ramondre Stevenson, who is by far the best skill player in offense, in my opinion. And it's a massive year for Matt Jones, because, I mean, look, Bill O'Brien's been brought back to New England. Obviously, he was there before he got a job in Houston, to restore Matt Jones to his rookie year form. But, I mean, look, Belichick's not a fan of Matt Jones. He's not made that clear. So he's not made that clear. Yeah, he won't confirm him as a starter this year, even now. Like, he's not a fan. He benched him for Bailey Zappi. Like, it's an interesting dynamic here. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because when you'd like to see that Matt Jones in a system. I mean, look, Bill O'Brien ran a system in Alabama last year. You'd like to think it's a friendly system for him. He can at least play to a sort of decent level. It's just they're not going to get the elite QB play or have the skill positions to win against the teams like Buffalo, Jets, Miami, because they haven't got a receiver one. Devontae Parker can't separate. He's just a jump ball specialist. He's great in the red zone. He's great 30 yards downfield if you want to win against a small corner, but he's not. You can't. I think the Dolphins, before they got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, had the lowest amount of separation in the league, and that's when Devontae Parker was their receiver one. So, and then Juju Smith-Schuster, he's not a number one guy either. He's a first down getter. Don't get me wrong, but he's not a top target. And I mean, Mike Gesicki, how are they going to use him in slot? Maybe he had that a lot in Miami last year, but he's not a blocking tight end, so there'll be low snaps. It's like the defense will be stellar. Don't get me wrong, I'm not worried about the defense whatsoever. It's Belichick's pride and joy. His son's a great play caller too. So you've got Jerome Mayo in there. It's just whether this offense can compete in this division, really. The defense as well. They've got Christian Gonzalez, who we talked about a lot in the draft in my previous podcast. He could be a star. He goes into, the best place in the league already as well to be a top man cover corner. So the defense is great, right? It's just what can this offense be, and will it compete?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with Mac Jones. He feels like he's going to become sort of like a Baker Mayfield type quarterback. He doesn't, he's competent. He can read the field, but he's not gonna, he doesn't, you don't have his name up in lights as like an elite kind of.
His ceiling's probably like that Garoppolo. Like that's probably
He's not going to be a difference maker between getting the playoffs and not getting the playoffs type thing. Juju, I don't think he'd be a good receiver too. He's not. You don't look at their receiving core and think, they got a real X factor difference maker there.
no.
Hunter Henry's probably their best receiving threat.
Oh, you got Gesicki as well, but it's
maybe
just
Gesicki.
Yeah.
I mean, they arguably have the best offensive line in the division.
Yes. Yeah,
which
I
is
think they do. Yeah.
the funniest thing when we've talked about the other three teams that are playoff bound, who don't have great like their question marks come at offensive line or like
Best
the running
running back.
game.
Best running back as well. It's like they've got a running game,
the
but
run
no
game and the
receivers
offensive line is fine, and maybe that's where they surprise a couple of people. Maybe they do become a bit more of a run first team, ground and pound, and then Mac Jones kind of gets you a couple of first downs here and there. They re-signed Matt Judon, like extended Matt Judon's contract, which was a good deal in the week.
He had an awesome season last year. Awesome.
He was probably one of the more underrated players in the league last year. I think, was it 15 sacks, something like that?
He was up there. He was up there with the likes of TJ Watt and Bosa, and I mean, New England as well. I think they were top 5 team sacks as well. So it's not just him. You got Josh Uche as well. You got plenty of guys. Look, Kyle Duggar is great for a blitz. You got plenty of guys that can defensively. I think, and again they have creative blitz schemes as well, where their linebackers coming in like Juwan Bentley or so. Yeah, they have plenty of options to cause callbacks chaos. Both at the back end and on the front seven as well. It's just what happens with their offense, really, isn't it? And that's why I think they're probably expecting I'm expecting another 8 and 9 kind of season, just which will put them in an interesting 11, interesting situation going into the off season. Is just like the Patriots are there, really, aren't they?
Kind of,
They're
one of those teams that probably need to move on from Belichick in the off season and blow it up. They don't really have any tradable assets to try and get any kind of draft capital other than maybe Judon.
Yeah, Gonzalez if he has a good year as well. Like maybe you could get something for him.
But maybe you can. I mean, you'd probably keep him and build a defense around him. He's really good talent, but
lineman.
They're just in limbo, kind of like good head coach who's gonna get your team where they need to be, but your team isn't good enough to kind of go anywhere meaningful with it. So
yeah.
It's that kind of the NFL is a bit of a like, if you're bad, it's good, or if you're really good, it's good. If you're mediocre, it's like agonizingly like it's just painful.
Yeah. Had that a lot of Miami over the years, and you over Denver as well. So it's like we're used to it. Some fans aren't used to it really because they've had years of dominance. But no, for a lot of fan bases, the Lions as well, the Jets, you just mid. You've been mid for a long time, and you're just waiting for a little bit of hope. That's what you're waiting for. We'll go on to another team who are very mid at the moment because you're just going to rebuild or what, and that's the Washington Commanders. Dan Snyder's finally gone. He was forced to sell the team after years of management to the consortium. And I mean, look, more change can be coming by the end of season 2 because this team is stuck in limbo. Ron Rivera has a very warm butt. He's on the hot seat. Will the new ownership want to move on from him? They even think about changing the name again. They're not sold on the Commander's name too, which I mean I'm not either. So I mean, you go back to football team or the Red Wolves or something. It sounds better than the Commanders. It's just a crap name. They're screaming of a team in transition with Sam Howell at QB. I mean, if he pans out, great, but will he? Unless they feel like he really has something, it just screams like a semi-tank, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he showed a little glimpse. Was it week 18, week 17 against Dallas last year? Where he showed a little bit of what he's about, what we saw at North Carolina with the and the legs, the running ability to kind of. And he's one of those who you're going to say kind of will work, will put in a shift for you.
Character has always been a thing that whenever you read about him, he's always got a good character. So there's that too.
But he you're just not ever convinced that this Terry McLaurin's an elite receiver for sure.
Yeah. Well, he's on
But then
QB number
you look,
like 6 now or something. So, he's had, he's
you
been.
look through the rest of the roster, and just nothing blows you away really. Chase Young, after a really good rookie season, was disappointing last year. Played through an injury, but still, he's the hype around him's kind of died down. And there's just not a lot to get excited about here. I think they're a team that I feel like will rebuild next summer. I think Ron Rivera will go and Eric Bieniemy will become the head coach there.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Ever since he was appointed offensive coordinator, I figured that was probably the route they were going to take. With new ownership in the building now as well, potentially another name change. It's another fresh start. Basically, is next off season. I think is probably going to be more the case than anything exciting this year.
Yeah, they strike me as a team that, if they have 2 or 3 wins at the trade deadline, they could trade away the likes of McLaurin or Chase Young or, who else they got? They've got Montez Sweat, Teron Payne, Jonathan Allen. They got, that defensive line. You could get some.
Yeah, defensive line is actually quite.
You get some great. You can get some great conversation back for them. Offensive line not great.
Big hats.
Yeah. And you got, look, McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, you can maybe get something for them too. But it's like if they're lower, they've won games, but it looks like they are going to win 5 or 6. Just trade away some players like Carolina did last year and try and get a better pick, because you may as well. Yeah, you got Caleb Williams, you got Drake May, you got Quinn Ewers, you've got Cameron Ward, which is a great name. We know someone called Cam Ward, but yeah, he's a QB. He's better to go quite highly as well. Which is madness. But fellow sports journalists, if you're wondering. But yeah, it's I expect them to be in the QB hunt. And again, how Eric Bieniemy's offense will look. You mentioned he probably will become a head coach next year. He's been he's had interviews for years, never really got it. He's moved away from Kansas City. He's calling plays for the first time as well. Will it be more run heavy? That's his sort of. That's his. He's not Andy Reid. That's his sort of. That's his background really. Will he run the ball more? Obviously, you got Gibson, you got Brian Robinson, you got backs that are capable of. You got quite a good tandem match there really. So it just reminds me of Carolina last year. You got Ron Rivera actually Carolina, since Ron Rivera reached the Super Bowl with them as well. Actually, they're just in limbo. They got great defense, crap offense, just or unproven offense, because look, Sam Howell could work out, but it's just one of those teams where they're very much looking to rebuild, and this will be the start of the rebuild, I think.
Yeah, you're looking for someone to kind of write home about, and you can't really see it.
Yeah.
They're at the lower end of the kind of Patriot scale that we were talking about, where you could probably max see them getting 5 wins, 6 wins maybe, but it's still not going to be enough to get yourself in any kind of conversation about getting like the first overall pick. You'll probably be around 9, 10, 11 pick overall, so you can't really trade up to the first overall pick. So yeah, they're probably at this. They're a kind of a prologue phase to their rebuild almost.
Caleb Williams in Washington, that's a great story. That is, because the franchise is just turning around like that. It's just that's what they need. They need that kind of hope, because after years of mismanagement with Dan Snyder, that basically just everyone laughing at them with the rest of the league, and saying, "Can you please get rid of this horrible person?" Well, now they've got that. They've got some great people in the consortium as well. It's getting to the point now where if you're a Commanders or if you're just something else, the football teams, Red Bulls next year, it would be a great time to be a fan next year, because you've got hope. Finally, after ages, you've got a bit of hope now.
There was a picture, wasn't there? There was it mini camp or training camp last year? Oh, sorry, try to. I did have a care package of water come through, but yeah, the and then compared to this year was like there was about 4 people at the training camp last year, and then the same kind of stretch of barrier, and it was like there was like 3 rows back of people. And it's kind of like the Dan Schneider effect of like he's left as a new dawn for the franchise now.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a year too soon for them to kind of player-wise have any kind of optimism about their team, but a bad year this year, like you said, get some draft capital, or just tear it up at the trade deadline and look to next off season to rebuild. So there's definitely like bright on the horizon, but this coming season feels like it's just going to be a bit meh again.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of controversial owners, we'll get into the Cowboys now, because Jerry Jones is the he's the epitome of controversy, really. Could this be Dallas's year? They're probably in their best position for a long while. They were excellent last year too, but obviously they needed excellent play at the quarterback position to compete at Philadelphia, who were one of the best teams that have ever graced the regular season, to compete to be a contender. How Dak Prescott plays this year will really determine the team's success, because I mean, they could go all the way if Dak can play like he did in 2016-17, early days, because last year was his worst season. Obviously, he spent a period at the start of the year out injured, and he still led the league in interceptions with only 12 starts. So you're just like, it's coming up to renewal talk with him as well. Will they pay him big money again? Because especially when you're seeing some of the contracts these QBs are getting, he's not going to get like Burrow money, but I can see him getting $45 million a year. And that's a lot of
definitely a Daniel Jones kind of.
Yeah. It's like
he's got to be on par with Daniel Jones at least.
But he's on the Daniel Jones contract now, so he's going to get more. That's the thing. It's like he's already had that contract, so it's like, and it's the same with Kirk Cousins as well. Like wherever Kirk Cousins goes, if he leaves the Vikings this offseason, he's going to get a massive deal. Look, I think Cousins will get $50 million this next offseason. I think it will happen because McVay and Shanahan are just going to be bidding for him because he's the perfect QB for their systems. It's true. Every podcast or whatever I listen to is saying the same thing. It's like Kirk Cousins is going to be a wanted man in this offseason, and will Minnesota pay you $50 million for a QB they can't move with now? You're just like, anyway, on to Dallas. Dak hasn't exactly earned that second big contract. They moved on from Zeke this offseason, so Tony Pollard gets the backfield to himself of an injury. Ronald Jones comes in as a sort of like a short yardage between the tackles back as well. My 2 big additions, which I think will really shape this team, they've added 2 veterans, both obviously with winning experience with the Patriots, and Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. They add depth to their star players, which are at those positions in Trayvon Diggs and obviously CeeDee Lamb as well. And they've got great players. They've got some depth now, which has really hurt Dallas recently. They've not had any depth. Star players get injured, they're kind of screwed. This is probably the best Cowboys roster in a long time, right?
Yeah, I think so. You've got 2 good corners, like you said, and definitely 2 good receivers. Tony Pollard taking the majority of snaps is a good thing, I think. They had to get rid of Zeke this offseason.
Yeah.
But,
they're looking at getting him back on a shorter deal, but I don't think that's happening now.
I just think he wanted too much money for what he gave them. He was essentially, I mean, the way I saw it was essentially like a glorified goal line back almost. He'd come in, he'd take the plaudits because he'd put the numbers up. But you'd look at his overall box score, he didn't really put up the numbers. He hasn't been that running back for a while. And he kind of carried on the coattails of his previous hype. And the way they used him, I think helped his image as well. But
yeah,
the rosters definitely looks good enough. I mean, you got 3 difference makers on defense for sure with Parsons, Gilmore, Diggs. The offense, in Dallas, I think you've always been looking for the secondary receiver. CeeDee Lamb, everyone's known is going to be a wide receiver one from the minute he was drafted. I think, everyone knew he was capable of being that number 1 receiver. It was who can they get to back him up, and I think Brandon Cooks is perfectly fine for that role.
He's quite good. He's good deep
in
for it as well.
Houston that he's good enough to be a wide receiver too. A good wide receiver too as well. Yeah. So I think that is definitely a better roster than it was last year. The main talking point for me is more Mike McCarthy than Dak Prescott this year, because I think Dan Quinn's waiting in the wings. He's been. I wrote about it in the preview about he's been on the coaching carousel interview wise before, and he refused a couple of interviews in this previous kind of round of interviewing. And I genuinely think Jerry Jones might have been in his ear saying that if we're midway through the season and it's looking bleak, then you can get the job if we fire McCarthy. And I think because Kellen Moore went this off season, he's now gone to the Chargers. So I think the buck now has to stop with McCarthy if they underperform again, especially on offense.
Well, he's calling plays, isn't he? So
he's got to be the guy out the door if they underperform again.
Yeah, and
but
I think with
the way the NFC is now is they've got to capitalize. They've got to cash in, because other than San Francisco and Philadelphia, there is no. Dallas can be that third team, and if they get hot at the right time, they could easily make the Super Bowl. I don't think that's outrageous to say.
They have to win a playoff game. Have to this year. You mentioned Mike McCarthy. Yeah, he takes control of play calling after they lost Kellen Moore to the Chargers. It's a weird one because he kind of got the Dallas job after admitting he'd spent a year out studying the league, sort of working himself as a coach after getting fired by Green Bay. He was like, "Oh, I've learned all this new stuff. I've had a year. I'm the best coach I can ever be." That kind of thing. So we're interested to see how his offense actually looks. But I mean, most people were expecting it to be sort of the beginning of the end there. And the thing with, obviously you mentioned Dan Quinn potentially going up, taking a step up to head coach. It was always a rumor that would be Sean Payton. He'd be the next Cowboys head coach. And obviously now he's in Denver. You're like, oh, like Jerry, he had his chance to go out and get Sean Payton, and he didn't go and get him. So it's now like, unless you trade him from Denver, like, which I'm sure you'll probably take, if there's a package like it was with the Saints, but you've missed out on Sean Payton, for sticking with McCarthy for another year. It does make sense. So I can see where you're coming from there. Again, with this team, the O-line is my biggest worry, because the rest of the team is all right. The D-line, they addressed, they added Marzi Smith in the back of the first round this year as well, because they've moved Tyler Smith, the rookie who played great last year, to guard this year. He won't be playing tackle. Obviously, there's this Zach Martin holdout, which what's going to happen there? He's losing a lot of money by holding out as well. Like, because the way the CBA works now is you can't really hold out because you can get fined loads of money. So you normally hold out in the building. You just don't practice. But he's risking his money too. So how that goes, we'll see. And then look, Tyron Smith has had up and down careers, isn't he? Up and down career recently, and they've got Terrence Steele at tackle who played a bit last year. But yeah, it's a sort of, if they've got moving parts on the offensive line, will Zach Martin play or not? I mean, Zach Martin has to play because he's the leader of this offensive line. If he doesn't play, then because of the offense, which we think it could be a disaster, which is a shame because they're really talented. But they're one of the Chuck gone
with Dak's injury history as well.
Yeah, true.
Especially lower body injuries. It's like you don't want to. There's one position you don't want to have issues with, and it's offensive line.
Yeah.
Especially the amount of money he's on.
If that goes down, Cooper Rush again, is it like who else have we got? Like, it's just like,
well, yeah. I mean, the free agent market's running thin as well because Bridgewater went to Detroit.
Yeah, you got Carson Wentz. Maybe goes to revive his career in Dallas.
Yeah, NFC East. Yeah,
it's just like that'd be interesting. For sure, they're one of the challenges for the NFC crown if everything goes right. But they have to get past Philly to do it first, and we'll get on to Philly now because they are, in my opinion, the best roster in the league. They lost the Super Bowl by 3 points to Kansas City in February. It was one of the most closest and most entertaining Super Bowls for a while as well. I mean, look, Hurts capped off an outstanding breakout season with an I'm him Super Bowl performance because it was. I mean, that throw to AJ Brown in the corner of the end zone was like, oh my, that's one of the best throws I've seen. So that was so good. And also that's for a guy who struggled with accuracy previously as well. You're just like, oh wow, that's I've seen front of defenders. That's a great throw. It's just like, hang on a minute, he has made the jump. Again, an outstanding couple of drafts to set them up to go again, despite losing multiple starters, the likes of Javon Hargrave and Isaac Samalo, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Miles Sanders. They lost, quite a few starters in the team last year, but they've had the likes of Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Can Jurgens. They signed Rashad Penny, and DeAndre Swift for cheap as well. Harry Roseman's so good at just keeping the valuable positions and then drafting line, corner, receiver, which are the most important positions, and then leaving linebackers and safeties to scrap and minimum deals. And it's worked well. And again, if they're in a second Super Bowl window in about 10 years, which is just incredible. They were a QB away. Hurts stepped up and went from an average quarterback on the hot seat to elite QB stratosphere in a year, which is just incredible. And I mean, look, it saw both the coordinators get the head coaching jobs too. So you've got two new guys in Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. Brian Johnson has actually got a lot of history of Hurts too. He's been his QB coach for the last 2 years. He's a family friend. He was coached by Hurts' dad as well. And he also tried to recruit Hurts in college as well. Obviously, he ended up going to Alabama instead, which, I mean, look, that's the easiest place to go in college football, isn't it, really? If Alabama come knocking, you probably go there, unless you've got some ties to somewhere else. If you've got the chance to play for, or unless you go to somewhere like USC or whatever, if you've got the chance to play for Nick Saban, you go and play for him. So it makes sense. And then Sean Desai, he is another that sort of runs that Fangio style system that's taken over the league. Really, you see, obviously the likes of Brandon Staley run it now, and it's not too much of a difference really from Jonathan Gannon last year either. So Philly, they're loaded, right, and they're going to go again. That's what I'm saying, because so many young guys and at the key positions.
Yeah, I think Desai was, when Denver came down to their defensive coordinator position, it was Desai and Vance Joseph they were the final two after Flores went to Minnesota. So
yeah,
I think he was a big name in the kind of the coaching pool that this off season. But no matter what the coaching is, I mean, the personnel, you just kind of go through the depth chart and it's almost like a fantasy football team. It's Hurts, Swift and Penny, Brown, Smith, Dallas Goedert, the O-line.
Olamides Zaccheaus as a receiver 4. Like he had a great year in Atlanta last year, like 600
he was
yards.
Receiver 2 in Atlanta, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Something like that. And like the offensive line, despite losing Sumalo, looks as good.
Yeah.
Jurgens is sat for a year, I think, behind Sumalo. So
yeah, he's eventually, I think, going to be Jason Kelsey's replacement.
I was going to say he's their kind of guard center kind of guy, isn't he? But I mean, who better to kind of sit and learn behind? You've got Lane Johnson in that building as well.
Yeah,
you can't really get better mentorship on as an offensive lineman, and then Harry Roseman just drafts so well. Like,
I mean, they drafted Jalen Carter. They had Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox. And Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick on that defensive line. It's like, oh, okay, let's go add Jalen Carter as well. Like, it's just like, hang on a minute, what?
Nolan Smith as well.
Yeah, he'll have a big role at linebacker. And pass rusher as well. Sorry, you got Kobe Dean coming in linebacker, replacing TJ.
This week just gone, they signed
Spears,
Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack as well.
Yeah,
like
Nicholas
to just
Moreau.
add to the linebacker room.
It's just names. It's just names, isn't it? Like it's just. I mean, you got the cornerback duo of Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Yeah, you just like. I mean, and safety as well. You lost.
You'd have question marks over safety, but.
I mean, you got Terrell Edmonds though. You brought him in from Pittsburgh. He's been a decent safety over the years, and Reed Blankenship, who played a role last year, and he'll take a bigger role this year because they lost both Epps and I can't remember who the other one was, but they lost both safeties.
CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier. Of course, I did. Yeah, they lost both of them this offseason as well. So look, they've reloaded with talent.
Yeah,
and
I mean, you could realistically probably point at most of those names and give a reason for them to make the all pro team.
yeah,
It's just ridiculous. Like when you think about it, and yeah, I think they're definitely the favourite in the NFC. Potentially the whole league. I mean, on the other side, you got Kansas City. You can't look past them with Mahomes and Reed, no matter who the support cast is there. But in the NFC, for sure, man for man, I think they're the best roster. San Francisco have a really good roster as well. And that'll probably be the championship game again this year. I can't see any other team competing with either team, if I'm honest.
no.
And then it just comes down to kind of the nitty gritty of those two teams. But I think they'd be my favourite for the NFC, potentially the entire league. Just because even if the starter goes down, in most positions, there's a plausible backup to come in and at very least be good enough.
Yeah, their depth is unreal. I think they've got the best roster in the NFL. I think they're going to win the conference, like you said, and I think they're clearly division favourites. If someone goes down, then maybe Dallas can sneak in. And the Dallas Philly games this year are going to be lights out. I can't wait to see them. So that'll be great. But yeah, for me, it's clearly they're clearly the favourites for the NFC East, and we'll finish the East as well with the New York Giants, who obviously made the playoffs last year, beat Minnesota in the wild card round in Minneapolis as well. And I mean, last season we learned that Brian Daboll was a top coach, right? He got Coach of the Year, and he got a group that's not exactly talented, right, into to win a playoff game. A finally healthy Saquon Barkley produced some much needed offense for them, and then Daniel Jones improved situationally too, so that allowed him to step up under Brian Daboll, and he got paid because of it, obviously as well. And I'm fascinated to see what they look like this year because they have no elite corner, they have no elite receiver. They brought in Darren Waller, of course, but they didn't need it last year because they had a great run game. They had great line play on both. You've got Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas, who's one of the best tackles in the league now. It's as long as Saquon Barkley stays healthy, this team will be in there and abouts because they got there last year because of it. I think they're slightly better at. Obviously, they've got they're similar to New England, and obviously Daboll was a New England disciple as well. But we mentioned New England and obviously the Commanders, how they've got a good teams like that, good line run game. These are probably the best at it because Barkley is by far top of his position when Ramondre Stevenson isn't that. So that's the difference really. But I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they will be there and thereabouts. But yeah, look, the Barkley thing's interesting, which we'll talk about now because look, he's been the headline throughout the offseason really. He finally got a contract. They tagged him as a free agent in the offseason. They tagged him, put on the franchise tag, refusing to play on the tag. He came into camp really, and the deal just got done. But the contract he settled for is a bit of a weird one because it's only a couple million more than the franchise tag number. He's still a 1-year deal, and he got a signing bonus, and that's it. Like this whole drama, you'd expect it to be like, I want a multiple year contract. I want 10 million a year. I want some security, which is what Dalvin Cook's holding out for as well because he wants a multiple year deal. Josh Jacobs is another one. The Raiders could rescind the franchise tag, which is interesting. So there's that as well. But it's just like this whole running back conversation. It's just like what's gonna what is. I just find it weird how Saquon. I think he could have got more because it's gonna be a conversation this entire season. It's just. Then you sort of look on the other side, just like, well, look at Le'Veon Bell. He did that, and he was out of the league within a year. So it's just like, it's just like holdouts don't work at the running back position because if you don't play, the point's proven where this guy can come in and step in and do the same thing for 7 million a year less than you. But I mean, we'll see. It's odd. It's an odd one with Saquon, and it shows how odd the running back position is really, because it's just like, unless you're Derrick Henry and you play 17 games a season for 4 years straight, do you really deserve the money?
Yeah, it's such a volatile position, isn't it? You can't guarantee that you're going to be healthy to ensure the investment to be paid in you. And I mean, one knee injury, and that could be your career done. Even if you come back from it, you could still, your game's going to be affected. You might not be as explosive. You might not have to change of direction.
Well, look at Alvin Kamara, for example.
Yeah, and it's just such a, you can't guarantee that you're going to be healthy week to week, let alone season to season. So they don't have a lot of leverage. And as the game goes more towards a passing league, which it has been for a couple of years now, but I think, they're going ever more in that direction. They hold even less weight now than they did even 5 years ago. So it's difficult. Perhaps there'll be a season-long negotiation. Maybe he just bought himself some more time to negotiate further with the 1-year deal, and it'll be a kind of thing. Mid-season we see
if he gets hurt, then he's not going to get another contract.
Yeah, so it's high risk, high reward, I suppose. But he's definitely an X factor on that offense, because you look through, other than Darren Waller, there's nothing there.
Yeah, if he gets hurt,
absolutely nothing there receiving core wise.
They're done. He's their offense. Like Darren Waller's great. Daniel Jones can win. He can break a play with his legs, but they're not gonna. Then Dallas and Philadelphia are clearly better. They're better than the Commanders, but they're going to be a wild card team. They're not going to win the division anyway. And with Saquon, he can make them a wild card team if he can go for 1,500 yards, like he did last year, kind of thing. Defense are actually pretty good, although they haven't really got the corners we were saying. They're good, in the weird positions like defensive tackle, linebacker, safety, which are the ones that they're not the corner, they're not the edge rusher. Although they did draft Kayvon Thibodeau, and I can't wait to see him play in in year 2, because he had a good rookie year last year. Wink Martindale last year, he blitzed over the place with random people, and it worked. But this year, we don't know, obviously, because they know what they do now. The talent's not really changed much on defense either, so we'll see. But I mean, look, they may take a step back this year, but that's fine, because they have Brian Daboll, who's a great coach, and the Giants for years, they couldn't win with the talent they had at the time. They drafted a lot of talent. They had tons of picks, and they couldn't win with that talent. Now Daboll came in, and you've seen Dexter Lawrence, Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, Andrew Thomas get contracts, and they were all Dave Gettleman's picks that went, that he was getting criticised for. Now they're the star players in the team. So you're just like, it was probably a coaching thing, but look, Daboll's the guy, and I mean, it's Daniel Jones has a pass catcher now, and Darren Waller. So obviously last year, he was thrown to practice squad guys all year because Kenny Golladay didn't work out. But
I think is he still on the roster?
No, I'm not sure, to be honest with
you. No, according to ESPN, he's not.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they've got a load of receivers according to ESPN.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, they do it kind of 3 rows and then your 4 columns. They're all filled up, but none of them kind of. Jalen Hyatt, who they drafted this year, Wandale obviously they drafted last year, are good.
You got. I mean, Isaiah Hodgins had a good season last year, but he came out of nowhere, didn't he? He didn't have any pedigree, really, did he? But yeah, the future is bright for the Giants, even if they're not that great this year. And you've got a great player to watch, Saquon Barkley too. So I reckon you'll probably get about 8 wins, which is what your over under is set at 8.5 now. So, and you've got a pretty tough schedule as well, but you'll be back. And look, Philly and Dallas aren't going to be winning forever as well.
The NFC though is, if you're in that 8 to
you could get a wild card spot
win range, you can still sneak in.
Mm-hmm. True.
As long as you're there or thereabouts in the hunt. What would be in the hunt generally. If you're there around week 16, then that can elevate your play in the final couple of weeks, and you can sneak in. So
they'll be fighting with the
there's
NFC
every
South
chance that they could be a
teams,
playoff team.
with the likes of Seattle, that kind of thing. They'll be fighting for the wildcard spot till week 17, week 18, I think. And it just comes down to have you stayed healthy and more healthier than other teams. I think that's pretty much what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, it's that, and it's just kind of who gets hot at the right time.
Yeah,
who gets the momentum going into
run out
kind of
Lions
the
last year.
week.
Yeah, or the Jags.
Yeah, so that's it's such a hard thing to talk about now, because obviously they could, mid-season Saquon gets injured. They're at kind of 6 wins by that point, and they're just kind of going through the motions, or one of the receivers could have a breakout year. Week 16, like we said, they're kind of 7-8 wins is looking plausible as a playoff spot, and their kind of players elevated by that. So that's the beauty of the NFC. As it is at the moment, like the AFC, if you were talking about having 8 wins by week 8, you're like, there's no shot of making the playoffs. You could not make the playoffs with 10 wins in the AFC. NFC, you're looking at potentially having a losing record and making the playoffs. So
well, Tampa did it last year,
it's
didn't
such
they?
a polarizing league.
So it's, like I said, it's a polarizing league, and the NFC is going to be the wild card spot. Actually, to be fair, the wild card in both conferences are going to go down to the wire. And I said it at the start of the podcast, I think 6 of these 8 teams, maybe even 7 with the Giants, have realistic playoff aspirations. And obviously the fact that only 2 of them are guaranteed with the division, there's 5 teams there that could get into the wild card, 5 of the 6 wild card spots. So it's all to play for, and that these teams are going to be entertaining to watch all year throughout. Thank you for joining me today, Charlie. It's been an honour to have you on.
Thank you.
We'll get you on many more times throughout the season too. As you said, we live together next year, so in a few weeks' time we're moving together. So we'll certainly do
knock on my door.
Yeah, I'll knock on your door. Walk across the hallway is sorted. So we'll do certainly loads of stuff together for the brand next year. So thank you for joining me, mate, and thank you for listening to the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. As I said, the guide is available. We both contributed loads to it, and it'd be great if you could check it out, because it's it's a highlight for our sort of young journalism career, having something in print there who our names on is quite cool, and as half the price it was last year. Go on. What are you going to say?
Oh no, it's a good opportunity, and obviously thank you to Josh and everyone at Full 10 Yards for giving us the opportunity to do it, and then obviously going on, appear on the podcast and stuff. Now going into this season is hopefully going to be exciting things on the horizon. Yeah, and if you do want to get in touch and write for us, then you can do that. We're looking for new NFL writers for the site as the new season begins. Just send one of us a message on Twitter, or actually, I think the account's DMs are open as well. Just send a DM over, and we'll get you set up, and we'll get you writing on the site, because this is a site for UK NFL fans by UK NFL fans, and the guide is no exception. And you can write next year, and it'll be great to read your stuff in the book. But without further ado, we'll end that. I hope to see you all at the kickoff party at Felson's in Birmingham, and it'll be great to again meet some of the listeners. And it'll be great to watch football with people as well. Obviously, you get a free drink as well, so that's great. If the free drink comes with a ticket, you're just like, hang on a minute, what? The value is perfect there. So it's great, especially when it's £5 a pint. Really, that's half the ticket gone like that. And if you buy a guide, that's it's three quarters of the ticket right away. So it's exactly. So it'll be great to see you guys there. But thank you for joining me again, Charlie. And this has been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast.